Hello everyone and welcome back to Shadow Man Stories. I can picture some of you already in bed, maybe some of you just getting home from work. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, I'm glad you're here. If this helps you relax or sleep, please like and subscribe. It means a lot. Now, let's get you comfortable, and I'll tell you tonight's story. My name is Rebecca Morrison, but everyone calls me Becca. I've been a park ranger for 15 years now, working the Jefferson National Forest in Virginia. My specialty is wildlife tracking and predator management, which basically means I'm the person they call when a black bear gets too comfortable near the campgrounds or when someone reports unusual animal behavior. I grew up in these mountains. My daddy worked the coal mines until they shut down in the 60s, and my granddaddy before him. I knew these woods like I knew my own hands, every ridge, every hollow, every abandoned mine entrance that dotted the landscape like open wounds in the earth. It was early November, 1979, when Sheriff Tom Hadley called me at 6 a.m. The temperature had dropped to 15 degrees overnight, and frost covered everything like broken glass. "Becca, I need you up at Devil's Backbone Ridge," he said. His voice sounded wrong, thin and stretched. "We got a situation with a hunting party." I'd heard the name Devil's Backbone my whole life. The ridge got its name from the way the rock formations jutted up like vertebrae along the mountain spine. Underneath, miles of old coal tunnels wound through the earth, most of them flooded or collapsed. The mining company had abandoned the whole area back in the 40s after some kind of accident. Nobody talked much about what happened. I loaded my truck with my tracking kit and headed up the old mining road. The forest felt wrong that morning, too quiet. In 15 years of working these mountains, I'd never driven 5 miles without seeing deer or turkey, or at least a squirrel. But that morning, nothing moved. Even the birds had gone silent. The old company town came into view just after dawn. A few wooden buildings still stood, their walls gray and weathered, windows empty as skull sockets. The main mine entrance gaped open at the base of the ridge, a black mouth in the hillside, surrounded by rusted equipment and rotting timber supports. Sheriff Hadley's cruiser sat in front of what used to be the company office. He stood outside, smoking a cigarette with shaking hands. Tom was a big man, former linebacker, afraid of nothing. Seeing him look scared made my stomach tight. "It's bad, Becca," he said, "real bad." He led me into the woods about a quarter mile from the mine entrance. 4 bodies lay in a small clearing, arranged in a pattern I didn't understand at first. They all faced the mine entrance, positioned like they'd been carefully placed there. I'd seen bear attacks before. I'd seen what happens when people surprise a mother with cubs or stumble on a kill site. This wasn't that. The bodies were completely drained of blood. Their skin looked like paper, stretched tight over bones. But there were no bite marks, no claw wounds, no signs of a struggle. Their hunting rifles lay nearby, unfired. Whatever happened, it happened fast. "Where are the other 2?" I asked. The sheriff had mentioned 6 men. "Hospital in Roanoke. They ain't talking, just staring at nothing, mumbling about something that came from the deep mines." I knelt next to the closest body. James Whitfield, according to his hunting license. 34 years old. Father of 3. His eyes were open, frozen in an expression I couldn't read. Fear, maybe. Or something worse, recognition. "What do you think did this?" Tom asked. I stood up, brushing dirt from my knees. "I don't know. But it wasn't a bear." I spent the next 2 hours examining the scene. The ground was too rocky for good tracks, but I found something near the tree line, long gouges in the dirt, too deep and too far apart to be from any animal I knew. Each mark was about 3 inches wide and 8 feet long, carved into the frozen earth like something had dragged massive claws across the ground. I took out my camera and photographed everything. Then I checked the perimeter, looking for scat, hair, anything that would tell me what kind of predator we were dealing with. Nothing. No bear scat, no territorial markings. The claw patterns were all wrong for any native species. And the way the bodies were positioned, that suggested intelligence. Planning. "We need to close this whole area," I told the sheriff. "Nobody comes up here until we figure out what we're dealing with." Tom nodded, but we both knew how hard that would be to enforce. Hunting season had just started, and these mountains were full of people with rifles and 4-wheel drives who didn't take kindly to government restrictions. As we walked back to our vehicles, I noticed something else. The mine entrance seemed darker than it should be, even though the sun was up now. Not just shadowed, actively dark, like the blackness went deeper than the absence of light. I'd heard stories growing up. Old mining stories that the men would tell when they'd had too much whiskey. Stories about things that lived in the deepest shafts. About workers who went down and never came back up. About sounds in the tunnels that didn't match any machine or animal. Tunnel demons, my granddaddy used to call them, then laugh like he was joking. I never believed those stories. I had a PhD in predator behavior from Virginia Tech. I'd tracked and relocated over 200 black bears. I believed in science, in evidence, in explanations that made sense. But standing there in the cold morning air, looking at that dark mine entrance, I felt something I hadn't felt since I was a little girl, afraid of the dark. I felt like something was looking back. The federal wildlife specialist arrived the next afternoon. Agent Thomas Byrne, Fish and Wildlife Service, though everything about him said military, crew cut, straight posture, eyes that missed nothing. He brought equipment I'd never seen before, ground-penetrating radar, electromagnetic field detectors, infrared cameras. 4 hunters dead with no apparent cause, he said, looking at my report. 2 survivors catatonic. And you found unusual claw marks. That's why they sent me. They send you to a lot of animal attacks? I asked. He looked at me for a long moment. Not exactly animal attacks, more like unusual situations. We set up a base in the old company office building. The roof leaked and the floor was rotting, but it gave us shelter and a view of the mine entrance. While Byrne assembled his equipment, I went through my database of every large predator sighting in a 3-county area for the last 5 years. Nothing matched. No unusual bear activity. No mountain lion sightings, which were rare in Virginia anyway. The last wolf had been killed in these mountains in 1910. Got something, Byrne said. He was looking at the ground-penetrating radar display. There's a massive hollow space about 400 feet below the main shaft. It's not on any of the mining company maps. How big? Size of a high school gymnasium, maybe bigger. I felt my skin prickle. The mines only went down 300 feet in this area. Company records are clear about that. Then someone dug deeper, Byrne said, or something else made that space. That night, I went through the old mining company records stored at the county courthouse. Most of the files from the 1,940 seconds were water-damaged or missing pages, but I found something in a folder marked Incident Reports Classified. 23 workers found dead in shaft number 7 in March 1943. The description made my hands shake. Bodies discovered in unusual condition. Complete exsanguination. No apparent external trauma. Cause of death, unknown. The mine had been sealed within a week. The company officials had left town within a month. The local newspaper that covered the story had burned down that same year, and all the archives were lost. Someone had wanted this forgotten. I was copying the report when my flashlight started dimming. The batteries were fresh, but the light faded to a weak yellow glow. I looked up and realized all the lights in the courthouse basement were doing the same thing, flickering and dimming like something was draining the electricity. Then I heard it, a sound from deep underneath the building, coming up through the old stone foundation. A scraping sound, like metal on rock, but wet somehow. Organic. I got out of there fast. Back at the base camp, Byrne had set up motion sensors around the mine entrance. Whatever this thing is, it's active at night. The electromagnetic readings spike after dark, and there's subsonic activity frequencies below human hearing that can cause nausea and disorientation. You're talking about this like it's not an animal, I said. I'm talking about this like it's something I need more data on before I make conclusions. He checked his watch. The radar shows movement in the deep chamber. Something large. We need to go down there. Into the mine? You know a better way to figure out what we're dealing with. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about those 23 miners in 1943, about the bodies arranged in the clearing, about the darkness at the mine entrance that seemed to swallow light. At dawn, Byrne shook me awake. We've got another one. A local man named Eddie Kowalski had been reported missing by his wife. His truck was found on a logging road 2 miles from the mine. We followed his trail into the woods, easy to track in the frost. The trail led straight toward the mine entrance, then stopped. Just stopped. like he'd been lifted into the air. We found him 3 hours later, and I wish to God we hadn't. He was suspended from the ceiling of a small cavern about 200 feet inside the mine entrance. His body hung from natural rock formations, like he'd been carefully placed there. Like the thing that killed him wanted us to find him, wanted us to see what it could do. Eddie's hunting rifle lay on the ground below him, all 6 rounds fired. I followed the bullet impacts with my flashlight. They were high, at least 12 feet up the cavern wall. Whatever Eddie shot at, it was massive. Jesus Christ, Byrne whispered. It was the first time I'd heard fear in his voice. That's when we heard it. From deeper in the mine, from tunnels that went down into absolute blackness, a sound like nothing I'd ever heard. Not an animal sound, not a human sound. Something in between, something wrong. A clicking, like insect legs on stone, but huge. And getting closer. We need to leave, I said. Right now. We ran. I'm not ashamed to admit it. We ran back toward the entrance with our flashlights bouncing and that terrible clicking sound following us through the dark. Behind us, I heard something moving on the ceiling, scraping against rock, impossibly fast. We burst out into daylight and didn't stop running until we reached the truck. My lungs burned. My hands shook so hard I could barely hold my equipment. Byrne was on his radio immediately, calling for backup, for more specialists, for anyone who might understand what we were dealing with. I looked back at the mine entrance. In the shadows just inside, something moved. Something that was too large to be down there, too wrong to exist. And then it was gone. That afternoon, we interviewed Paul Henderson, one of the survivors from the hunting party. He'd regained some ability to speak, though his eyes still had that 1,000-yard stare I'd seen in combat veterans. Tell me what you saw, I said gently. His voice came out broken, like pieces of glass grinding together. It crawled like a spider, but big as a bear, bigger. Its legs, they had too many joints, bent ways that ain't natural. Its face. He started crying. Its face was like old leather stretched over a skull, teeth like railroad spikes. And its eyes, when our flashlights hit them, they reflected, back like mirrors. Like animal eyes, but human-shaped. How did you get away? Byrne asked. We didn't get away. It let us go. It wanted us to tell people. To warn them. Paul grabbed my wrist, his fingers cold. It used to be human, Ranger Morrison. I swear to God. It used to be a man. We went back into the mine the next morning with a full team, 4 federal agents, 2 cave rescue specialists, and enough equipment to light up a football stadium. Byrne had convinced his superiors that we were dealing with an unusual biological threat. He didn't mention the part about it maybe being human once. The mine entrance led to a main shaft that descended at a 30-degree angle. Old rails for mine cars still ran along the floor, disappearing into darkness. The timber supports looked ancient, many of them cracked or collapsed. Every 50 feet, side tunnels branched off into blackness. Stay together, Byrne ordered. Don't investigate any side passages without team support. The electromagnetic detectors went crazy as soon as we entered. The needles maxed out and a high-pitched whine filled the air. 2 of the agents got immediate nosebleeds. This level of EM radiation shouldn't be possible from natural sources, one of the specialists said. Something down here is generating it. We descended deeper. The temperature should have warmed up as we went underground, but instead it got colder. Our breath came out in white clouds. Ice crystals formed on the walls where water had seeped through cracks in the rock. At 200 feet, we found the first nest. I don't know what else to call it. An alcove off the main tunnel, maybe 15 feet across, filled with bones. Human bones. Dozens of skeletons, maybe more, arranged in circles like they'd been carefully organized. Some of the bones looked ancient, darkened with age. Others were newer, still showing bits of dried tissue. Count the skulls, Byrne said quietly. I did. 23. Skulls, arranged in the center of the room. The workers from 1943. One of the cave rescue specialists, a woman named Angela Chen, knelt next to the bones. These show signs of consumption. The long bones have been cracked open for marrow. The rib cages are intact, but the organs would have been removed first. She looked up at us. Something fed on these people. We're leaving, one of the federal agents said. His face had gone pale. This is a crime scene. We need to document and extract, not explore further. There's something deeper, Byrne said, checking his radar. The large chamber I detected. It's another 200 feet down. I don't give a damn what's down there. The agent's words cut off as all our lights dimmed simultaneously. The darkness rushed in like water, thick and absolute. My flashlight dropped to almost nothing, barely enough to see my own hand. That's when we heard it moving. Not the clicking sound from before. This was different, a wet, sliding sound, like something massive dragging itself across stone. It was all around us, echoing from every tunnel, impossible to locate. Flares! Byrne shouted. Light the flares now! Angela Chen pulled the igniter on a road flare. Bright red light flared up, pushing back the darkness. In that sudden illumination, I saw something that made my mind refuse to process it at first. On the ceiling, directly above us, something clung to the rock. Something that might have been human once, but had changed. Had evolved into something else. Its body was elongated, stretched out like taffy, covered in pale skin that looked like it had never seen sunlight. 4 limbs. But each one was wrong too long, with extra joints that bent in impossible directions. The hands and feet had become massive claws, 3-inch talons that dug into solid rock like it was soft clay. And its face. God, its face. Paul Henderson had been right. It looked like leather stretched over a skull, the features barely human anymore. The jaw hung open too wide, revealing rows of teeth that looked like they'd been filed into points. Its eyes caught the flare light and reflected it back, 2 silver dollars of light in the darkness. But worse than any of that, I recognized something in those eyes. Intelligence, awareness. The thing looking down at us knew exactly what it was doing. It dropped. I've never seen anything move that fast. 1 second it was on the ceiling, the next it was among us. Angela screamed as a claw slashed past her head, missing by inches. One of the federal agents fired his pistol, but the creature was already gone, scuttling up a side tunnel with that horrible spider-like movement. Run! Byrne grabbed my arm and pulled me back toward the entrance. We ran, but the creature was faster. It appeared in front of us, blocking the path, then vanished into a side tunnel. Playing with us, hurting us. We ended up in a small chamber with 3 possible exits, our backs pressed together, weapons and lights pointing in every direction. The creature moved in the darkness around us, never quite visible, always just beyond our light. It's intelligent, Byrne said. It's separating us. Don't let anyone get isolated. One of the federal agents, a man named Marcus Torres, suddenly jerked backward. Something had grabbed him from behind, impossibly fast. He fired 3 shots into the darkness as he was dragged away. His screams echoed for what felt like forever, then cut off abruptly. Retreat, Byrne ordered. Controlled retreat, stay in formation. We made it back to the main tunnel, leaving road flares every 20 feet to mark our path. Behind us, I could hear the creature following, moving through side passages, above us, below us, everywhere at once. At 100 feet from the entrance, we found Marcus, or what was left of him. His body had been drained of blood and arranged in the same position as the acquit hunters we'd found in the clearing facing the mine entrance. Left as a message, a warning. We burst out into daylight like drowning people breaking the surface. 2 federal agents vomited. Angela Chen collapsed, crying. I stood there shaking, my hands still gripping my flashlight so hard my knuckles had gone white. Byrne was on the radio again, his voice sharp and controlled. This is Agent Byrne. I need immediate containment protocol. We have a confirmed hostile entity. I repeat, confirmed hostile. This is not a drill. I looked at him. What the hell is that thing? I don't know, he admitted, but it's been down there a long time, and it's getting bolder. That night, we reviewed the footage from our helmet cameras. Most of it was too dark or too shaky to be useful, but Angela had captured 3 clear seconds of the creature on the ceiling before it dropped. We watched it over and over, trying to understand what we were seeing. Look at the torso, Angela said, freezing the frame. You can see remnants of clothing, old clothing, like work clothes from the 1940 seconds. And here, Byrne pointed to the creature's face. Facial structure is still partially human. The skull shape, the eye sockets. This thing was a person once. What could do that? I asked. What could change a human being into that? Byrne pulled up the geological surveys of the mine. The coal seams in this area have unusual mineral content. uranium deposits, rare earth elements, things that shouldn't naturally occur together. If there was prolonged exposure to something radioactive, something we don't understand yet, that doesn't explain the intelligence, Angela said. That thing was hunting us tactically. It knew the mine layout better than we did. It was using the tunnels strategically. Because it used to be a miner, I said. It used to work down there. It knows every tunnel, every shaft, every hiding place. We all sat in silence, thinking about the implications. How many were transformed? Angela finally asked. Byrne looked at the bone count from the nest chamber. 23 miners died officially in 1943. We only saw one creature. So either only one transformed, I said, or there are 22 more of those things down there. None of us slept that night. At dawn, Byrne received new orders. The Army Corps of Engineers was en route with mining explosives. The plan was simple. Seal the mine permanently with enough dynamite to collapse the entire tunnel system. What about learning what happened? I protested. Understanding what caused this? The priority is containment, Byrne said. We can't risk it reaching the surface. There's a major hiking trail 3 miles from here. In summer, hundreds of people use it every week. And the creature will be buried forever. But nature had other plans. That afternoon, a freak warm front moved through the mountains. The temperature jumped 30 degrees in 2 hours, and all that accumulated snow and ice started melting fast. Water rushed down the mountainside in streams and rivers, including into the mine. Byrne's radar showed the underground water table rising rapidly. The lower tunnels are flooding. The creature's habitat is being destroyed. Which means it has to go somewhere, I said. Up, Angela said quietly. It has to come up. We evacuated to higher ground and waited. The Army Corps team arrived with their explosives, but Byrne ordered them to hold position. If we seal the entrance and it's already left through another exit, we've just trapped ourselves with it. Night fell. The mountains were full of rushing water sounds, and the whole forest seemed to be waking up after the freeze. And somewhere out there in the darkness, a creature that used to be human was being forced from its underground home. The attack came at 2 a.m. The creature hit our perimeter fast and hard, taking out 2 spotlights and killing a federal agent before anyone could react. It moved through our camp like a nightmare, impossibly fast, attacking from unexpected angles. Fall back to the vehicles, Byrne shouted. Everyone to the trucks! But the creature had herded us again. It had positioned itself between us and our escape route. We were trapped in a box canyon with high rock walls and one way out through the mine entrance. It's forcing us back underground, I realized. It wants us in its territory. Then we don't give it what it wants, Byrne said. He grabbed one of the explosive packs from the Army Corps engineers. We go in, we plant these charges, and we blow this whole mountain down on top of it. That's suicide, Angela said. It's the job. I grabbed another explosive pack. I know these mines better than anyone. If we're doing this, I'm coming. Byrne looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. Just us. Everyone else holds the perimeter. If we're not back in 30 minutes, detonate remotely. We entered the mine for the last time. The main shaft was ankle-deep in freezing water. Our lights cut through the darkness, revealing nothing but empty tunnel. But I could feel it, watching us, tracking us, following us deeper. According to the radar, there's a main support column about 300 feet down, Byrne said. If we take that out, the whole system collapses. We descended, planting smaller charges every 50 feet as backup. The electromagnetic readings were off the charts now, making our equipment malfunction. My flashlight dimmed and died. I switched to my backup and kept moving. At 250 feet, we found the nest chamber. The bones were gone. The creature had moved them, hidden them somewhere else, protecting its territory even as it was being destroyed. There, Byrne pointed. A massive stone pillar, 30 feet thick, holding up thousands of tons of rock. We plant the main charge here. That's when the tunnel behind us collapsed. Tons of rock and earth crashed down, sealing the only way out. We were trapped in the nest chamber with one explosive pack, dying flashlights, and something in the darkness that wanted us dead. Plan B, Byrne said, pulling out his radio. But the collapse had blocked all signals. We were completely cut off. Water was rising. The flooding had reached this level, and it was coming in fast through cracks in the walls. Already, it was up to our knees. There has to be another way out, I said. The miners would have had emergency exits. I studied the walls by flashlight, looking for anything that might indicate a secondary shaft. There, a narrow crack in the far wall, partially hidden by shadows. I wedged myself into it and felt cold air rushing past my face. Air from somewhere else. This connects to something, I called back. We squeezed through the crack into a natural cavern system that the miners must have broken into. Water rushed past us, waist deep now, flowing downhill toward an underground river. We follow the water down, I said. Rivers always find a way out. Behind us, I heard that clicking sound. The creature had followed us into the cavern system. We waded through the flooded passage, the current getting stronger, pulling us along. Our lights were almost dead now, just faint yellow glows in the absolute black. The clicking sound got closer. Then, the tunnel opened up into the massive chamber Byrne had detected on his radar. A huge natural cavern, hundreds of feet across, with an underground river cutting through the center. And on the far side, I could see faint light, actual daylight, filtering down through cracks in the rock. "There's our exit," Byrne shouted. But between us and freedom, in the middle of the cavern, stood the creature. This time I could see it clearly in the dim light. It was massive, at least 8 feet tall when it stood upright, its elongated limbs giving it a horrible spidery appearance. But it was the face that held my attention. In the better light, I could see it more clearly, the remnants of human features, weathered and changed but still there. And around its neck, barely visible beneath the stretched skin, was a rotted piece of cloth. A name tag. The kind miners used to wear. I squinted, trying to read it in the faint light. Kessler. Harold Kessler, I whispered. The foreman from the 1943 disaster. The creature's head tilted, like it recognized its own name. And for just a second, something human flickered in those mirror-like eyes. Memory. Recognition of what it used to be. "Harold," I said again, louder. "Harold Kessler, can you understand me?" It moved closer, and I saw that its jaw was trembling. Trying to form words, it no longer had the anatomy to speak. A sound came out, broken and wet, but maybe, just maybe, trying to form a word. "Help," it seemed to say. "Help me." Then the humanity flickered out. The predator returned. It lunged. Byrne grabbed my arm and jumped. We hit the underground river, and the current swept us away. The creature dove in after us, moving through the water like an eel. But the current was too strong, pulling all of us toward the crack of light at the far end of the cavern. The river narrowed, became rapids. I smashed into rocks, went under, came up gasping. Beside me, Byrne still had the explosive pack. "The support pillar," I shouted over the roar of water. "Can you set the timer?" 30 seconds, he shouted back. "We'll be in the blast radius." "Do it." He activated the timer and threw the pack. It landed on a rock shelf near the massive stone pillar we'd seen earlier. The creature was swimming toward us, gaining despite the current. 20 seconds. The river pulled us through a narrow gap in the rock. Daylight ahead, real daylight, we were going to make it. 15 seconds. The creature's claw grabbed Byrne's leg. He screamed. I grabbed his arms and pulled, but the creature was too strong. It was climbing up Byrne's body, reaching for his throat, its mouth opening impossibly wide. 10 seconds. "Let go," Byrne shouted at me. "Save yourself." I didn't let go. I grabbed a loose rock and smashed it into the creature's face. Once. Twice. On the third hit, its grip loosened. The current swept us forward, out through the crack, into blessed daylight and fresh air. 5 seconds. We tumbled over a small waterfall into a natural pool. I dragged Byrne toward the bank, his leg bleeding badly where the creature's claws had dug in. 3 seconds. The creature emerged from the crack in the rock, water streaming off its body. It looked at us across the pool, and I swear it smiled. A horrible, knowing smile that said this wasn't over. 2 seconds. I covered Byrne's body with mine. 1 second. The mountain exploded. The blast wave knocked me unconscious. When I came to, Angela Chen was standing over me. Behind her, Army Corps engineers were setting up a perimeter. "The entire mine system collapsed," she said. "Caved in on itself. There's no way anything survived that." I sat up slowly, every part of my body hurting. Byrne was on a stretcher, his leg bandaged but alive. The federal agents were photographing the collapsed mine entrance, now just a pile of broken rock and earth. "Did you see it come out?" I asked. Angela shook her head. "Nothing came out except you two." But I'd seen that smile, that knowing look, and I'd heard what the creature tried to say back in the cavern. "Help me," like it knew what it was. Like Harold Kessler was still in there somewhere, trapped inside that transformed body, aware of what he'd become. That was a horror beyond anything I'd imagined. The official report, written 3 weeks later, listed the cause of death for all victims as industrial accident during All-Die-S unauthorized mine exploration. The area was designated a federal environmental cleanup site. The Army Corps of Engineers pumped the flooded tunnels full of concrete, sealing them permanently. I transferred to a desk job at the regional headquarters in Roanoke. Couldn't go back into the woods, couldn't handle enclosed spaces. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that creature's face, Harold Kessler's face, asking for help that would never come. Agent Byrne recovered from his injuries, though he walked with a limp now. Before he left, he told me something that I think about every day. "There's a task force," he said, "federal level. They handle cases like this industrial, supernatural incidents. Places where human activity wakes up something that shouldn't exist, or creates something new. Devil's Backbone is Type 3, transformed human entity." "How many cases?" I asked. "More than you'd think. Less than you'd fear." He handed me a card with a phone number. "If you ever see anything else unusual, call this number. Don't go through official channels." 6 months later, I was reviewing environmental reports for abandoned mine sites throughout Appalachia when I noticed a pattern. 7 locations, spread across 4 states, all former coal mining operations from the 1,920 seconds through 1,950 seconds. All abandoned suddenly after incidents that were never fully explained. All with the same unusual geological features, uranium deposits mixed with rare earth elements in the coal seams. I pulled up seismic data for each location. Every single one showed large hollow chambers deep underground, below the documented mine shafts. I called the number Byrne gave me. "We're aware," the voice on the other end said. "We're monitoring." Monitoring? There could be more of those things. Could be, or could be nothing. We check quarterly. So far, all sites remain stable. And if they don't stay stable, silence on the line. Then, we'll handle it. That's what we do. I hung up and stared at my map of Appalachian mine sites. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. All those dark holes in the earth, all those sealed tunnels, all those places where desperate men once worked in conditions that killed them slowly. What if Devil's Backbone wasn't unique? What if Harold Kessler wasn't alone down there in the dark, changing, transforming, forgetting his humanity one day at a time? The mine sites show up on my computer screen like wounds on a map. I've started documenting everything I can find about mining accidents, about workers who disappeared, about tunnels that were sealed for safety reasons that nobody explains. It's my job now. My real job, beyond the paperwork and the desk. Watching those old wounds, making sure nothing crawls out. Most nights, I dream about the underground river, about being swept along in darkness. And sometimes, in those dreams, I see Harold Kessler's face, not the monster face, but his human face, from before. A photograph I found in the 1943 company records. A young man, smiling at the camera, proud of his job, proud to be a foreman. He had a wife, according to the records. 2 kids. They never found his body. For 36 years, his family thought he just disappeared in the mine collapse. Now I know the truth. He didn't disappear. He changed. He survived down there in the dark, eating whatever he could find, transforming into something that could survive without light, without human contact, without any of the things that make us human. And part of him remembered. Part of him was still Harold Kessler, trapped inside a monster's body, aware of every terrible thing he did. That, more than anything else, is what keeps me awake at night. Because if it could happen to him, what about all the others? All those other miners in all those other collapsed tunnels? How many of them are still down there, waiting in the dark? How many of them are still human enough today, ask for help? And what happens when they start coming up? The seismic monitors continue their patient watch. The concrete seals hold firm. The government maintains its careful silence. But sometimes, late at night, I pull up the data feeds from the Devil's Backbone site, and I look at the activity readings, the small vibrations, the electromagnetic fluctuations, the tiny movements deep underground that might just be settling rock, or might be something else, something that remembers daylight, something that wants to come home. My name is Billy Harrington, and I've been a ranger in the Monongahela National Forest for 21 years. I know these West Virginia mountains like the back of my hand, every trail, every hollow, every deer path through the timber. I've pulled lost hikers out of ravines, fought wildfires until my lungs burned black, and once talked down a man with a rifle who'd lost everything in a divorce. I thought I'd seen it all. I was wrong. People around Point Pleasant tell stories about a giant moth creature that shows up before terrible things happen. They say it appeared before the Silver Bridge collapsed back in '67, killing 46 people. I always figured those stories were just small-town legends, the kind of thing people tell themselves when they need something to blame for random tragedy. I'm 44 years old. I lost my dad in a mine explosion when I was 12. I learned early that bad things happen without warning, and the only defense is being prepared. That's why I volunteer with the fire department. That's why I keep emergency supplies in my truck. That's why I believe in protocol and procedure over superstition. But in August of 1981, something happened that changed everything I thought I knew. The summer had been brutal, the worst drought anyone could remember. The reservoir in my district, Drowned Valley, had dropped to historic lows. Parts of the old town that got flooded back in the 60 seconds were visible again for the first time in 15 years. You could see the church steeple poking up through the water, and the roof of the old general store, and rows of dead trees that had been standing underwater for over a decade. It was eerie, seeing a drowned town come back to life like that. On August 13th, I got a call from my supervisor. A team of engineers was coming to inspect the dam. There'd been some concerns about structural integrity, and with the water so low, it was the perfect time to check the exposed sections. "Just coordinate with them, Billy," my supervisor said. "Make sure they have what they need. It's probably nothing, but we have to follow procedure." The team arrived the next morning, 3 people in a white government van. The lead engineer was Sarah Fleming, a serious woman in her 50s with silver hair pulled back tight. She'd been inspecting dams for 15 years and had a reputation for being thorough. With her was Dr. Marcus Webb, a hydrologist with wire-rimmed glasses who kept adjusting them nervously, and Janet Price, a safety inspector who moved like she'd rather be anywhere else. "Hot enough for you?" I said as they climbed out of the van. Sarah didn't smile. "We need to get started. I want to examine the dam face before the sun gets too high." I led them down to the reservoir. The exposed mud stank like rot and dead fish. Old bottles and rusted cans stuck out of the dried lake bed like bones. In the distance, the church steeple rose from the shallow water, its white paint peeling and cracked. "Jesus," Marcus said, staring at the drowned town. "That's unsettling." "Gets worse the more the water drops," I told him. "Last week you could see the main street." Sarah was already setting up equipment near the dam face, a massive concrete wall that held back what was left of the reservoir. She had ground-penetrating radar, core sampling tools, and cameras on long poles for checking underwater sections. I left them to their work and headed back to the ranger station. The access road to Drowned Valley was seasonal, and cell service didn't exist for 60 miles in any direction. If something went wrong out here, emergency services were 2 hours away, minimum. That's why I stayed close during their inspection. Around noon, my radio crackled. "Billy, this is Sarah. Can you come back down here?" Her voice sounded strange. Tight. I grabbed my keys and drove back to the dam. The 3 of them were standing together, looking up at something. When I got closer, I saw Sarah's hands were shaking. "What's wrong?" She pointed toward the church steeple, about 200 yards out in the shallow water. "Do you see that?" I looked. At first I didn't see anything unusual. Just the steeple, bleached white by sun and water. Then something moved. Something big. It was perched on top of the steeple like a bird, but it was way too large to be any bird I'd ever seen. Even from this distance, I could tell it was massive, maybe 12 feet across if it spread its wings. The shape was all wrong, too. The body looked almost human, but the wings were like a moth's, covered in dark scales or fur. "What the hell is that?" Marcus whispered. I raised my binoculars. For a moment, I couldn't focus. My hands wouldn't stay steady. Then the image cleared, and I saw it. The creature had a humanoid torso, muscular and dark. Its wings were folded against its back, but I could see they were huge, with patterns like eye spots on moth wings. And its eyes glowed red, not reflecting light, actually glowing like embers. It was looking right at us. "That's not real," Janet said. "That's not real." But it was real. I could see it moving, shifting its weight on the steeple, its head turned slightly, tracking our position. We stood there for maybe 10 minutes, nobody saying a word. The creature didn't fly away or hide, it just watched us. Then, suddenly, it was gone. Not flew away, just gone, like someone had switched off a light. Nobody talked on the drive back to the ranger station. Sarah sat in the passenger seat of my truck, gripping her equipment bag so hard her knuckles were white. Marcus and Janet followed in the van. When we got inside, I made coffee. Nobody wanted any, but I made it anyway because I needed something to do with my hands. "Heat stroke," Janet said finally. "We all got heat stroke and hallucinated." "We all saw the exact same thing," Marcus said. "That's not how hallucinations work." "Then what was it?" Janet's voice went high and thin. "What the hell was it?" I thought about the stories from Point Pleasant. The giant moth. The glowing red eyes. The bridge collapse. "I need to make some calls," I said. But there were no phones at the station, just the radio, and I wasn't about to report a giant moth creature over official channels. Instead, I drove into town that evening and went to the library. The librarian, Mrs. Chen, had worked there for 30 years. If anyone knew the local history, it was her. "I need information about the Mothman," I told her. She looked at me over her reading glasses. "This about the engineering team at the dam? Small towns. Everyone knows everything. Maybe. I just want to read the old stories." She brought me a stack of newspaper clippings and local history books. I sat in the corner and read until the library closed. The Silver Bridge collapse in 1967 wasn't the first time people had seen the creature. Not even close. In 1907, witnesses reported a winged man with burning eyes in the days before a mine explosion that killed 47 people. In 1944, the creature was seen before a train derailment that killed 23. Every time, it appeared roughly 3 days before disaster. The Cherokee people who lived in these mountains before we came had a name for it. They called it Nevi Atzila, the prophet spirit. According to their stories, it appeared to warn people when many lives were in danger. It couldn't stop the disasters, but it could give people time to prepare, to evacuate, to save themselves. My hands started shaking again as I read. 3 days before disaster. We'd seen it this morning. I drove back to the station too fast, my truck bouncing over potholes. The engineering team was staying in temporary housing near the dam, 3 small cabins the Forest Service maintained for visiting researchers. Sarah answered when I knocked. She looked like she hadn't slept. "We need to talk," I said. Inside, Marcus and Janet were sitting at a small table covered in papers and photographs. They'd been working. "Look at this," Marcus said, pointing to a printout. I checked the electromagnetic readings from the dam area. There are massive anomalies, radio frequencies way outside normal range. And the pattern started exactly 3 days ago. 3 days, I said. Sarah nodded slowly. "I know. I've been reading the same stories you have." "You think it's real?" Janet asked. "The Mothman? You think it's actually real?" "I think we saw something today," Sarah said, "and I think we need to figure out what it was trying to tell us." She spread out blueprints of the dam across the table. Red marks covered several sections. "We found problems," she said. "Serious problems. There's a hairline fracture in the foundation right here. It's been growing. And the water pressure, even at these low levels, is putting stress on weak points we didn't know existed." "How bad?" I asked. "Bad enough that if there's any seismic activity, even a small earthquake, the dam could fail." She looked up at me. "And according to the Geological Survey, there's a 40% chance of a magnitude 4 earthquake in this region within the next 72 hours. My stomach dropped. "If the dam fails." 3 towns downstream, Marcus finished. Fletcher's Mill, Riverside, and Copper Creek. Combined population about 2,000 people. The flash flood would hit them in less than 30 minutes. I sat down hard. We need to evacuate. On what grounds? Janet said. We saw a giant moth, so everyone needs to leave their homes? She was right. I could already imagine the phone call with my supervisor. The questions from state emergency management, the media attention. I'd be Mothman Billy for the rest of my career if I still had a career. We need more proof, Sarah said. Real, concrete proof that the dam is going to fail. How do we get that? I asked. Marcus adjusted his glasses. We keep investigating. We document everything. And we hope we're wrong. But I knew we weren't wrong. I could feel it in my bones, the same way I'd felt the wrongness in the air right before the mine took my father. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing those red eyes, watching us from the steeple. Around 3 a.m, I gave up and drove back to the dam. I don't know what I was looking for, maybe some sign that we'd all been crazy, that it was just a bird or a trick of the light. The moon was nearly full, turning the exposed mud silver. The drowned town looked like a graveyard. Then I saw it again. The creature was standing on the dam face itself this time, clinging to the concrete like a massive insect. Even in the moonlight, its eyes glowed red. It was huge up close, at least 7 feet tall, with wings that had to span 15 feet or more when fully extended. I should have been terrified. I should have run. Instead, I got out of my truck and walked toward it. What do you want? I called out. My voice echoed across the empty reservoir. What are you trying to tell us? The creature tilted its head, watching me. Then something happened that I still can't fully explain. Images flooded my mind, not words, pictures, feelings, knowledge. I saw the dam cracking, water exploding through the breach. I saw the flood racing down the valley, hitting Fletcher's mill first. I saw houses lifted off their foundations, cars tumbling in the current. I saw people, so many people swept away. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that it would happen in exactly 48 hours. On August 15th, at 6:23 inches the evening, the vision ended. I fell to my knees in the mud, gasping. When I looked up, the creature was gone. I called an emergency meeting at dawn. Sarah, Marcus, and Janet gathered in the station, and I told them what had happened. It showed you the future, Marcus said slowly. Like a vision. I know how it sounds. Actually, he said, it makes sense. If this entity exists across time, somehow, if it can perceive events before they happen, then direct mental communication would be the most efficient way to share that information. Janet laughed, but it sounded wrong. Listen to us. We're talking about time-traveling moth monsters like it's normal. Nothing about this is normal, Sarah said. She spread new photos across the table. But Billy's not the only one who saw it last night. Look. The photos showed the dam face at different angles, and in several of them, you could see massive marks carved into the concrete like talon scratches, each one about 2 feet long and 6 inches deep. These weren't here yesterday, Sarah said. I would have noticed. They appeared overnight. Where are they? I asked. She overlaid the photos onto the dam blueprints. The scratches formed a pattern, and that pattern matched exactly the locations of the structural weaknesses her team had found. It's marking the weak points, Marcus said, showing us where the failure will start. This is insane, Janet said. But she was staring at the photos, and I could see the belief growing in her eyes. What do? We test it, I said. The creature showed me the dam will fail at 6:23 p.m. on August 15th. That's tomorrow evening. If it's really telling the truth, it should be able to predict smaller things too. How? Sarah asked. I'll ask it. That night, I went back to the dam alone. I stood on the concrete face and spoke to the empty air, feeling ridiculous but determined. If you're real, if you can really see the future, show me something small. Prove it. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the creature was there, perched on a dead tree 20 yards away. This time I wasn't afraid. This time I looked right at it. Images flooded my mind again. I saw our generator failing tomorrow at 11:17 a.m. I saw Marcus dropping his camera in the water at 2:30 p.m. I saw Janet cutting her hand on a sharp piece of rebar at 4:45 p.m. Small things. Provable things. Okay, I said. I'll watch. The creature spread its wings, massive, beautiful, terrible, and launched into the air. It moved impossibly fast, disappearing into the darkness in seconds. The next morning, I told the team what the creature had shown me. We all watched the clock. At 11:17 a.m. exactly, the generator coughed and died. Sarah checked it. The fuel line had cracked, draining all the gas overnight. At 2:30 p.m., Marcus was photographing the underwater dam sections when his camera slipped from his hands and splashed into the shallow water. "Son of a bitch," he said, fishing it out. At 4:45 p.m., Janet reached for a sample core and gasped. Blood welled up from a cut on her palm. "Damn rebar," she muttered. We all looked at each other. Nobody said anything. "It's real," Sarah finally whispered. "God help us, it's real. We have to evacuate the towns," I said. "Tonight, right now." "How?" Janet pressed her hand against her shirt to stop the bleeding. "We go to the authorities and say, a magic moth told us the dam will break tomorrow at 6:23 p.m. They'll lock us up. Then we use the structural data," Sarah said. "I have enough evidence of foundation weaknesses to recommend a precautionary evacuation. It won't be popular, but it's justifiable." She was already pulling out her phone to call her supervisor. But when she tried, there was no signal. "The radio?" I said. We ran to the ranger station. I grabbed the radio handset and tried to raise the main office. Static. I tried the emergency channel. More static. "The frequencies," Marcus said. "The electromagnetic interference from the creature, it's blocking our communications." "Then, we drive to town," I said. "We go directly to the mayor, to emergency services." "And tell them what?" Janet interrupted. "That we need to evacuate 2,000 people based on engineering data that shows a times possible times failure at sometimes uncertain times future time? They'll ask for more tests, more analysis. That'll take days or weeks." "We don't have days," I said. "We have 26 hours. Sarah was pacing, her engineer's mind working through the problem. "We need someone with authority who'll act immediately. Someone who trusts us enough to take a huge risk." I thought about my sister-in-law, who was married to the mayor of Fletcher's Mill. I thought about my daughter, who was visiting her cousins downstream. I thought about 2,000 people who had no idea what was coming. "I'll make them listen," I said. But that night, everything got worse. Around midnight, all 3 members of the engineering team came running to my cabin. Sarah was white-faced, Janet was crying, and Marcus looked like he might be sick. "It came to all of us," Sarah said. "At the same time, in our cabins. What did it show you?" "Everything." Her voice shook. "The exact sequence of the dam failure. The crack formation. The water surge. The flood path. And the casualties. Billy, it showed us everyone who will die if we don't evacuate." "Who?" I asked. She handed me a piece of paper. In the moonlight, I saw names and addresses 47 people. Families I knew. Kids who went to school with my daughter. "How do you know these names?" "It showed us their faces," Marcus said. "Their houses. Where they'll be when the water hits." We spent the last 2 hours looking them up in phone books, matching faces to names. I stared at the list. The Miller family, 5 people. Old Mr. Chen, who ran the hardware store. The Patterson twins, both firefighters. Jenny Reeves, who taught 2nd grade, tomorrow, Janet whispered. "They all die tomorrow unless we do something." I looked at the paper again. My hands weren't shaking anymore. Everything felt suddenly clear, like the moment before pulling someone from a burning building. You stop being afraid and start doing what needs to be done. "Pack up all your evidence," I said. "Every photo, every reading, every structural analysis. We're driving to Fletcher's Mill right now, and we're not leaving until they agree to evacuate." The mayor's office was in the Fletcher's Mill Town Hall, a brick building that had stood since 1923. We arrived at 3 in the morning and pounded on the door until lights came on inside. Mayor Richard Chen opened it in his bathrobe, angry and confused. Then he saw the look on our faces. "Billy, what's wrong?" "The dam is going to fail. We need to evacuate the town." He blinked. "What?" Sarah pushed past him, spreading blueprints and photos across his desk. "The foundation has critical fractures. The geological survey predicts seismic activity. If even a small earthquake hits, the dam will breach." "When?" he asked. We all looked at each other. This was the moment. Either we told him everything, or we lied. Tomorrow evening, I said, at 6:23 p.m. That's very specific. We have extremely reliable information. The mayor studied us. He was 60 years old, had run this town for 20 years, and wasn't stupid. He could tell we weren't giving him the full story. What aren't you telling me? Before I could answer, the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in red. Power's out, the mayor said. Must be the substation. But I knew it wasn't the substation. I could feel that familiar pressure in the air, like before a thunderstorm. The electromagnetic interference. Then the creature appeared. It materialized in the center of the office, not walking in, just suddenly there, as if it had always been there, and we were only now able to see it. Its wings brushed the ceiling. Its red eyes illuminated the room. The mayor fell backward over his chair. Sarah screamed. Marcus just stared, his scientific mind trying to process what he was seeing. The creature looked directly at me. And then it did something it had never done before. It spoke. Not with words, with pure meaning, flowing directly into my mind with such force that I grabbed the desk to stay standing. Asterisk TWO. 1,000 voices will silence. 47 will drown. Will children will drift face down. I have walked these mountains for centuries. I have warned and warned. Will you hear me now? Asterisk. Images flooded through all of us. I could tell because everyone gasped at the same moment. We saw the geological fault line, miles underground, under pressure. We saw the hairline crack in the dam foundation, invisible to human inspection, but growing, always growing. We saw tomorrow's earthquake, magnitude 4.2, epicenter 12 miles south. And we saw what would happen at 6:23 p.m. The crack would split wide, the dam face would shatter, 4 million gallons of water would explode through the breach in a wall 40 feet high. It would hit Fletcher's Mill in 18 minutes, Riverside in 23 minutes, Copper Creek in 31 minutes. We saw families eating dinner, kids doing homework, old folks watching television, all of them swept away in seconds, their houses tumbling like toys in the current. We saw 47 people die. The vision ended. We were all on the floor, gasping. The creature was gone, but the red glow of its eyes seemed to linger in the air. Mayor Chen pulled himself up. His face had gone from angry to terrified to determined. "Get me the emergency coordinator," he said. "Wake up the fire chief. Call every town council member. We're evacuating." "Richard," I said, "they're going to ask why. I'll tell them it's a precautionary measure based on engineering analysis and seismic activity predictions. I'll tell them we're running a disaster preparedness drill. I don't care." He grabbed his phone. "My wife is in this town. My grandchildren. If there's even a 1% chance that thing was telling the truth, we're evacuating." The next 6 hours were chaos. The fire chief activated emergency sirens. Council members went door to door. The state police set up roadblocks on routes to higher ground. News crews showed up, asking questions nobody could answer. People were angry. They didn't want to leave their homes. Some refused. But enough listened. By noon, most of Fletcher's Mill had evacuated to emergency shelters in the hills. Riverside and Copper Creek were slower. They were farther downstream and felt less urgency. But the state police kept pushing, and gradually the towns emptied. I drove back to the dam with the engineering team. We had to know if this was real. We had to see it happen. Sarah set up cameras focused on the dam face. Marcus positioned seismographs. Janet coordinated with emergency services by radio. The electromagnetic interference had stopped, as if the creature knew we'd listened and didn't need to block our communications anymore. At 6:15 p.m., the sun was still high and hot. The exposed mud of the reservoir stretched out like a desert. The drowned town stood silent in the shallow water. 8 minutes, Sarah said quietly. "Maybe nothing will happen," Janet said. But she didn't sound like she believed it. At 6:19 p.m., birds suddenly took flight from the trees around the reservoir, thousands of them, all at once, filling the sky. "Something's wrong," Marcus said, watching his instruments. "Seismic activity is spiking." The ground shook, not hard, not at first. Just a gentle rolling motion, like being on a boat. But then it intensified. The ranger station groaned. Equipment fell from shelves. Magnitude 4.2. Marcus shouted over the rumbling. "Right on schedule." The earthquake lasted 15 seconds. When it stopped, We all ran to the observation point. The dam face looked fine. For a moment, I thought we'd been wrong, that somehow. Then the crack appeared. It started as a thin line, barely visible. Then it grew, spreading like black lightning across the concrete. Water began seeping through, just a trickle at first. 6:23, Sarah whispered, checking her watch. Exactly 6:23. The crack widened. The trickle became a stream. The stream became a torrent. And then, with a sound like the world breaking, the dam face exploded outward. 4 million gallons of water hit the valley with the force of a bomb. The wall of water was taller than a house, carrying debris, trees, cars, pieces of buildings from the drowned town. It sounded like a freight train and looked like the end of the world. We watched it race down the valley toward Fletcher's Mill, toward the empty town, toward the place where 2,000 people would have been. The water hit the town in 18 minutes, exactly as predicted. Houses were ripped from their foundations. The main street became a raging river. The town hall where we'd met with the mayor just hours before collapsed like cardboard, but there was no one inside, no one on the streets, no one in their homes. The evacuation had worked. Everyone was safe on higher ground, watching their homes destroyed but alive, alive, alive. I fell to my knees in the mud, crying like I hadn't cried since my father died. Sarah put her hand on my shoulder. "We did it," she said. "We actually did it." Marcus was recording everything, his camera trained on the devastation. "0 casualties," he said, sounding amazed. "Property damage in the tens of millions, but 0 casualties." As the sun set, turning the flooded valley orange and red, the creature appeared one last time. It landed on a dead tree near us, wings folded, eyes glowing in the dimness. And I felt, rather than heard, its final message. You listened. You saved them. Others will need warning. Others will need courage. Walk with open eyes. Then it spread its wings, those massive, beautiful wings, and flew toward the mountains. It rose higher and higher, and just before it disappeared into the darkening sky, there was a flash of light, like lightning but cleaner, brighter. And then it was gone. The official report credited outstanding emergency preparedness and decisive action based on thorough engineering analysis for the 0 casualty evacuation of Drowned Valley. Sarah Fleming received a commendation and was promoted to Senior Dam Safety Inspector. She travels the country now, teaching other engineers how to spot structural weaknesses. Dr. Marcus Webb published research on environmental electromagnetic anomalies as disaster predictors. He doesn't mention the creature, but his work has improved earthquake prediction models nationwide. Janet Price quit her job and became a therapist specializing in trauma. She says she wants to help people who've seen impossible things learn to live with them. Mayor Chen was reelected twice. He tells people he just had a feeling about the evacuation, that sometimes you have to trust your instincts. And me? I'm still a ranger in these mountains, still doing my job, still keeping people safe. But something changed that August. I notice things now that I missed before. The way animals behave before storms, the feeling in the air before an accident happens, the signs that something's wrong, even when I can't explain why. Other rangers have started contacting me quietly, carefully, never in official channels. They tell me about strange encounters, about creatures that don't fit any known species, about warnings they receive just in time to prevent disasters. There's a network now, informal and unofficial. We share information, we watch for signs. We're ready to act when the impossible happens. Last week, a ranger in Tennessee sent me photos of massive talon marks on a bridge support. The bridge hasn't collapsed yet, but engineers are inspecting it now. 2 months ago, a ranger in North Carolina reported a creature with glowing eyes before a wildfire that would have killed a dozen campers. They evacuated in time. The Cherokee Nation gave me a blessing. They said I'm a friend of the prophecy spirits, and that the Inmayatsila will walk with me. I don't know what that means exactly, but I wear the blessing with pride. My daughter is 16 now. Last month she told me she's thinking about becoming a ranger. She says she wants to help people the way I do. I told her it's not an easy job, that sometimes you'll see things you can't explain and make decisions that everyone will question. She just smiled and said, "I know, Dad. But someone has to do it." Sometimes on quiet nights, I drive out to what's left of Drowned Valley. The towns downstream were rebuilt on higher ground. The reservoir was drained and turned into a memorial park. There's a monument there now, listing the names of everyone who was saved that day. 47 names are engraved on a separate plaque, the people who would have died if we hadn't listened. I visit that plaque often. I think about Jenny Reeves, who still teaches second grade in the new school. About the Miller kids, who graduated high school. About old Mr. Chen, who reopened his hardware store and still gives me a discount on supplies. All alive because we chose to believe the unbelievable. I keep the list. The creature gave us those 47 names and addresses in my desk drawer. Sometimes I take it out and run my finger down the names, reminding myself that impossible things can be true, that the world is stranger and more wonderful than we think. And on August nights, when the moon is full and the air feels heavy with possibility, I sometimes see a massive shape flying over the mountains, wings spread wide, eyes glowing red, watching over the valleys and the people below. I don't point it out to anyone, I just watch it fly, and I whisper, "Thank you," to the darkness. Because somewhere out there, the Anvayatsila is still walking, still watching, still warning, and if it ever appears to me again, I won't hesitate. I'll listen, I'll believe, and I'll do whatever it takes to save every single life I can. That's my job now. That's what I learned in Drowned Valley. Sometimes the monsters aren't the ones we should fear. Sometimes they're the ones trying to save us. My name is Margaret O'Sullivan, but everyone calls me Maggie. I've been a park ranger at Cumberland Gap National Historical Park for 17 years now, and I thought I'd seen everything these old mountains could throw at me. Black bears, rattlesnakes, lost hikers, stolen artifacts, you name it, I'd dealt with it. But I never believed in ghosts. Not once in all my years protecting these historic sites. I should probably mention, I'm Irish Catholic. My grandmother came over from County Cork in the 1922, and she filled my childhood with stories about banshees and fairy rings and spirits that walked the old country lanes. I loved those stories, but I never thought they were real. They were just tales to scare kids into behaving. The trouble started on a Tuesday in September 1992. Indian summer had settled over the mountains, hot during the day, but dropping to 50 degrees once the sun went down. I was finishing up paperwork at the visitor center when my radio crackled to life. "Maggie, we've got a situation at Whispering Ridge." It was Tom, one of our seasonal rangers. His voice sounded weird, shaky. "What kind of situation?" "The evening tour group. Something happened. Patricia's hurt." I grabbed my first aid kit and headed out. Whispering Ridge was one of my favorite spots in the park, an old homestead from the 1832 with original cabin foundations and a small family cemetery. It sat about 3 miles down a hiking trail, far enough from the main road that you really felt alone out there. My own ancestors, the O'Sullivans, had been some of the first Irish families to settle this area. The ruins at Whispering Ridge were actually from my family's original homestead. When I got there, I found chaos. 12 tourists were huddled together near the trailhead, some crying, others just staring at nothing. Patricia Vance, our best tour guide, was sitting on the ground with her back against a tree. Blood ran down her face from a cut above her eye. Her shirt was torn, and I could see dark bruises forming on her arms. "Patricia, what happened?" I knelt beside her, opening my kit. She looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. "Something attacked us, Maggie. Something we couldn't see." "A bear? A mountain lion?" "No." She grabbed my wrist hard enough to hurt. "Something else. Something angry." I cleaned the cut on her forehead. It wasn't deep, but head wounds always bled like crazy. "Tell me exactly what happened." Patricia took a shaky breath. "We were doing the standard evening program, talking about the O'Sullivan family history, showing them the old cabin foundation. Everything was normal. Then it got cold. I mean really cold, like someone opened a freezer door. And we heard a voice." "What kind of voice?" "A woman's voice, speaking in some other language. Not English, it sounded." She closed her eyes. It sounded so angry. One of the tourists, a man in his 50s wearing a UK sweatshirt, stepped forward. "It was Irish Gaelic," he said. "I'm from Dublin originally. I couldn't understand all of it, but I caught a few words. She was telling us to leave, to get off her land. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. My grandmother had taught me a little Irish Gaelic when I was small, though I'd forgotten most of it. Then things started flying, Patricia continued. Rocks, sticks, pieces of the old cabin, they just lifted up and started throwing themselves at us. I got hit in the face, others got knocked down, we all ran. I looked at the group. Most of them had minor cuts and bruises. One woman had a nasty scrape on her knee, and a younger man was cradling his arm like it might be sprained. Did anyone see what threw the objects? They all shook their heads. One of the women, probably in her 30s, spoke up. There was nothing there. We could hear her voice, feel her presence, but we couldn't see anything. It was like fighting with air. I radioed for an ambulance to meet us at the parking lot, then helped everyone back down the trail. Patricia needed a doctor to look at her head, and a few others wanted to get checked out. By the time I got them all sorted and gave my initial report to my supervisor, it was nearly midnight. I should have gone home, should have gotten some sleep. Instead, I found myself pulling out the old archives we kept in the back office. If someone or something was speaking Irish Gaelic at the O'Sullivan homestead, I wanted to know why. What I found kept me up until dawn. The next morning, I drove to the County Historical Society with copies of what I'd found. My eyes felt like sandpaper, and I was on my third cup of coffee, but I needed answers. Mrs. Henderson, the Historical Society director, looked over the documents I'd spread across her desk. "This is about your family, isn't it?" "Yeah." I pointed to a faded deed from 1834. My great-great-great-grandfather Seamus O'Sullivan built the homestead at Whispering Ridge. But look at this entry from 1847. She read aloud, "Dispute between Seamus O'Sullivan and Thomas Bell regarding property boundaries escalated to violence. O'Sullivan deceased. Sheriff ruled death accidental during altercation." Now look at this. I showed her a letter written in careful script, dated 3 weeks after Seamus's death. It was from his widow, Bridget O'Sullivan. Mrs. Henderson's lips moved as she read silently. When she finished, her face was pale. My God, she's pronouncing a curse. The letter was chilling. Bridget wrote that her husband had been murdered by the Bell family, not killed in a fair fight like the official report claimed. She said the Bells had wanted the O'Sullivan land for years because of the natural spring, the same spring that local Cherokee had considered sacred. The letter ended with words in Irish Gaelic, which Mrs. Henderson couldn't read, but I'd looked them up in my grandmother's old books. O'Sullivan blood shall reclaim this land. The Bells will know no peace, no prosperity, no joy until justice is done. That's quite a curse, Mrs. Henderson said quietly. Do you think? I think Patricia Vance is married to Robert Bell, I said. I looked it up this morning. He's a direct descendant of Thomas Bell. Mrs. Henderson stared at me. You're not seriously suggesting. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just gathering information. But my hands shook as I gathered up the documents, because I was starting to wonder. That afternoon, I went back to Whispering Ridge, alone. I told myself I was just checking for vandalism or wildlife, but the truth was I needed to see for myself. In daylight, with a clear head, maybe I could find a rational explanation for what happened to Patricia's tour group. The trail was beautiful in September. The leaves were just starting to turn, patches of gold and red among the green. Squirrels chattered in the oaks. A red-tailed hawk circled overhead. Everything seemed normal, until I reached the homestead. The temperature dropped the moment I stepped into the clearing. I'm not talking about a little breeze. I mean, it went from 75 degrees to what felt like 45 in the space of a heartbeat. My breath came out in visible puffs. Hello? My voice sounded small in the sudden stillness. Even the birds had gone quiet. I walked toward the old cabin foundation. The stones were covered in moss and leaves, barely visible after all these years. My ancestor had laid these stones with his own hands, had lived here with his wife and children, had died here, if the old records were right. A twig snapped behind me. I spun around. Nothing. Just trees and shadows. Another snap, this one to my left. I turned again. Still nothing. If someone's out here, this isn't funny. I tried to sound authoritative, like a ranger dealing with pranksters. But my voice wavered. Then I heard it, a woman's voice. soft at first, like a whisper carried on wind that didn't exist. Asterisk, Fogmothalam. Asterisk. Leave my land, I knew those words. My grandmother had taught me. I'm not leaving, I said, surprising myself. This is my land too. Seamus O'Sullivan was my ancestor. The temperature dropped even further. I could see frost forming on the leaves around my feet. Impossible, in September, in Tennessee. The voice came again, louder this time, and closer. Asterisk, Sethu, asterisk, who are you? Margaret O'Sullivan, Seamus's great-great-great-granddaughter. The silence that followed felt alive, waiting. I could feel something watching me, weighing my words. Then, without any warning, my flashlight flew out of my belt. It didn't fall, it flew, straight across the clearing like someone had thrown it. It hit a tree trunk with enough force to shatter the lens. My radio was next. It ripped away from my shoulder and sailed into the underbrush. I heard it crack when it landed. I should have run. Every instinct screamed at me to get out of there. But I stood my ground, because somewhere under the fear, I was angry. This was my family's land. My history. I had a right to be here. Show yourself, I shouted. If you're Bridget O'Sullivan, if you're my grandmother's grandmother's grandmother, then show yourself. The air in front of me began to shimmer, like heat waves rising off pavement in summer. The shimmer thickened, darkened, began to take shape. I saw the outline of a woman, thin, not very tall, wearing a long dress from another century, but I couldn't see her face clearly. It was like looking at someone through water. The image wavered and faded. Asterisk, and T.A.M. O'Sullivan, asterisk, the voice said, clearer now. The O'Sullivan name. Asterisk, Ardea Reed. Asterisk, at last. Then she was gone. The temperature returned to normal so fast I actually stumbled. Birds started singing again. My radio squawked from somewhere in the bushes, Tom's voice asking for a status update. I found my radio and flashlight, gathered them up with shaking hands, and got the hell out of there. I didn't report what happened. How could I? Hey boss, I just talked to a ghost of my great-great-great-grandmother, wasn't exactly going to fly in the incident report. Instead, I claimed equipment failure and said the site was secure. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, I dreamed of a woman in a long black dress standing by a natural spring. She was crying, but when she turned to look at me, her eyes were full of rage. The next 3 days were hell. It started with the photographs. I came into work Wednesday morning to find all the pictures in our visitor center rearranged. We had dozens of historical photos on display: Cherokee families, early settlers, Civil War soldiers, logging operations from the 1900s. Someone had moved every single O'Sullivan family photo to the front, center positions. The rest were stacked in a back room. Did you do this? My supervisor asked, puzzled. No, the building was locked all night. I checked the log, no one came in. Thursday, I found all my tools moved. I kept my equipment in a locked shed near the ranger station axes. Saws, climbing gear, first aid supplies. When I opened it that morning, everything was arranged in a perfect circle on the floor. In the center was a rock with 3 words scratched into it in shaky letters. Find my husband. I showed it to Tom. Is this someone's idea of a joke? He picked up the rock, turned it over. Maggie, this stone looks old. Really old. And look at these scratches, they're worn, like they've been there for years. Friday, people started calling in. 3 different hikers reported feeling watched on the trail to Whispering Ridge. One woman claimed she heard crying coming from the old cemetery. A photographer said his camera stopped working the moment he tried to take pictures of the homestead and then started working perfectly once he left. But the worst thing happened Friday night. Robert Bell, Patricia Vance's husband, was working late at his hardware store in town when something attacked him. At least, that's what he said. His brother found him on the floor behind the counter, unconscious, with bruises around his throat like someone had tried to strangle him. When he woke up in the hospital, he told the police that invisible hands had grabbed him. He'd tried to fight, but there was nothing to fight. He'd passed out from lack of oxygen. The marks on his throat were real enough clear fingerprints, the doctor said. Small hands, a woman's hands. The police ruled it an assault, but they had no suspects. Security cameras showed Robert alone in the store the whole time. The doors were locked from the inside. There was no sign of any intruder. I went to see him Saturday morning. Patricia was there, her face still bruised from Tuesday's incident. Robert looked awful, pale and shaky, with dark circles under his eyes. "It's my fault," Patricia said quietly. "I should have told you sooner, Maggie. My maiden name was Patricia Bell. Robert and I are cousins. We both descend from Thomas Bell, the same Bell who killed Seamus O'Sullivan in 1847. She's coming after all of us," Robert whispered. His voice was hoarse from the attack. "Every Bell descendant. She won't stop until we're all dead." "Who won't stop?" "The O'Sullivan widow, Bridget." He grabbed my hand. "You have to help us. You're family to her, right? You're an O'Sullivan. Maybe she'll listen to you." I wanted to say no, wanted to tell them this was crazy, that there had to be rational explanations. But I'd seen her. I'd felt her presence. And I couldn't ignore the evidence anymore. That night, I did something I'd never thought I'd do. I called my grandmother in Boston. She was 89 years old, still sharp as a tack, and the only person I knew who might actually believe me. "Nana, I need to ask you about family history. About Bridget O'Sullivan." There was a long pause. "Why are you asking about Bridget, child?" "Because I think I met her. Or her spirit. At Whispering Ridge." Another pause, longer this time. "Then, I was wondering when she'd show herself. My mother told me stories about Bridget, said she was a gentle woman until her husband was murdered. After that, she changed. Became hard. Bitter. She pronounced a curse on the Bell family the day they buried Seamus, or rather, the day they should have buried him." "What do you mean?" "They never found his body, Maggie. The Bells claimed he fell into a ravine during the fight, and the body was lost, but Bridget never believed it. She thought they buried him somewhere on the disputed land. Thought they hid his grave so the O'Sullivans couldn't give him a proper Catholic burial." My blood ran cold. Where would they have buried him? She spent the last year of her life looking. Dug up half the property before she died of exhaustion and grief. The family sold the land after that. They couldn't bear to live where she'd suffered so much. Eventually, distant relatives bought it back, and it got passed down until it became part of the park system. "Nana, people are getting hurt. Bridget's spirit is attacking Bell family descendants. I need to know how to stop her." "You can't stop her, child. You can only give her what she wants, justice. Find Seamus's body. Give him a proper burial. Force the Bells to admit what their ancestors did. Only then will Bridget rest." After I hung up, I sat in my small house and stared at the wall. How was I supposed to find a body that had been hidden for 145 years? Where would I even start? My grandmother's words echoed in my head. She thought they buried him somewhere on the disputed land. The disputed land. The property records I'd found showed that the argument between Seamus and Thomas Bell was about boundaries near the natural spring, the same spring that was now part of the protected historical site. But there were no buildings near the spring. Just forest and weight. The Bell family had owned a barn. I'd seen it in old photographs, a big barn that stood about a quarter-mile from the spring, right at the edge of what would have been the property line. The barn was long gone, but the foundation might still be there, buried under 150 years of leaf litter and undergrowth. Sunday morning, I got permission to do a routine survey of the historical site with ground-penetrating radar. It was equipment we used sometimes to map old structures without digging. My supervisor thought I was documenting the O'Sullivan homestead for preservation purposes. I had other plans. The ground-penetrating radar operator was a grad student named Kevin from the University of Tennessee. He was excited about the project, chattering about soil composition and electromagnetic reflections as we hiked to Whispering Ridge. "Where do you want to start?" he asked, setting up his equipment. "Near the spring." I pulled out an old photograph. "See this barn in the background? I think the foundation is still here somewhere." It took us 3 hours of systematic scanning, but we found it. The GPR showed a clear, rectangular outline buried under 2 feet of soil and forest debris. Kevin was thrilled. "This is a great find. We should get a team out here to excavate." "Wait," I pointed at the screen. "What's that?" In one corner of the barn foundation, the GPR showed a distinct anomaly. Something buried deeper than the foundation itself. Something about 6 feet long and 2 feet wide. Kevin adjusted the settings, scanned again. His excitement faded. That looks like a burial. An unmarked grave." We stared at each other. "I need to call the sheriff," I said quietly. It took 2 days to get the paperwork approved for excavation. 2 days during which 3 more Bell family descendants were injured. Robert Bell's teenage daughter fell down her stairs 13 times in a row, she claimed, like something kept pushing her back up and throwing her down again. She ended up in the hospital with a broken arm and concussion. Robert Bell's son crashed his car into a tree. He swore the steering wheel turned by itself. The police found no mechanical problems with the vehicle. And Patricia Vance woke up Tuesday morning to find "killer's blood" written in frost on her bedroom mirror, even though it was 60 degrees outside. The Bell family was terrified. The police were baffled. And I was running out of time. Wednesday afternoon, the forensic team finally broke ground. I stood at the edge of the old barn foundation with the county sheriff, a forensic anthropologist, and my supervisor. The TV news had gotten wind of the story. Possible historical murder investigation was how they were framing it. Cameras filmed from a distance. They found the bones 3 feet down. The forensic anthropologist, Dr. Chen, worked carefully with brushes and small tools. As she exposed the skeleton, her expression grew grim. Male, approximately 40 to 50 years old. Time of burial consistent with mid-1800s based on soil stratification. And, she paused, leaning closer. Clear evidence of blunt force trauma to the skull. This man was hit from behind with a heavy object. Multiple times. Murder? The sheriff asked. Almost certainly. They lifted the skull carefully. On the back, I could see the fracture's 3 distinct impact points that had caved in the bone. We'll need to do DNA analysis to confirm identity, Doctor. Chen said. Do you have any living relatives of Seamus O'Sullivan? Yes, I heard myself say. Me. That night, I went to Whispering Ridge alone. I know it was stupid. I know I should have brought backup. But this felt personal, private, a conversation that needed to happen between family members. The moon was nearly full, bright enough to cast shadows. I walked to the old homestead and sat on the foundation stones. Bridget, I said to the empty air. I know you're here. I found him. I found Seamus. The temperature dropped instantly. She appeared faster this time, more solid. I could see her face now thin, careworn, with eyes that held centuries of grief and rage. Asterisk a inyan, asterisk, she said. Daughter. Asterisk ta se amsith agat, asterisk, you found him? Yes, and we have proof he was murdered. The Bell family can't deny it anymore. She drifted closer. Up close, I could see details I'd missed before: the worn fabric of her mourning dress, the calluses on her hands, the gray streaks in her dark hair. She'd been real once. A living, breathing woman who'd loved her husband and lost him to violence. Asterisk Ciartus, asterisk, she whispered. Justice. I'll get you justice, I promise. But you have to stop hurting people. Robert Bell's daughter is 16 years old. She didn't kill anyone. She wasn't even born when any of this happened. Bridget's form flickered, like a candle flame in wind. Asterisk, and Fuil Bell. Asterisk, the Bell blood. She's a kid, just like your kids were when Seamus died. Would you want someone hurting them because of something you did? The temperature dropped even further. Frost formed on the stones beneath me. For a moment, I thought I'd made a terrible mistake. Her eyes blazed with anger, and I could feel the weight of her rage pressing down like a physical force. Then she spoke, her voice barely audible. Trila, 3 days. 3 days for what? Fe siardas no fagid siad bas. Get justice, or they die. She vanished. I sat there in the dark, shaking. 3 days. 72 hours to somehow force the Bell family to publicly acknowledge a murder committed by their ancestor 145 years ago. 72 hours to find some way to lay both Bridget and Seamus to rest. And if I failed, she would kill every Bell descendant she could find. The next day, I did something that surprised everyone, including myself. I called a meeting of the Bell family descendants, the Cherokee Nation Tribal Council, the County Historical Society, my park supervisor, and the local press. Some people thought I was crazy. My supervisor threatened to put me on administrative leave. But I'd found evidence of a historical murder on federal land, and I had every right to investigate it. What I didn't tell anyone was that I'd also invited a Catholic priest and asked the Cherokee Tribal Council to bring a spiritual leader. The meeting took place at the Park Visitor Center. About 30 people showed up, Bell family members looking nervous, reporters looking curious, historians looking excited, and me looking exhausted because I hadn't slept in days. I stood in front of everyone with my notes and the forensic reports. In September 1847, Seamus O'Sullivan died in what was officially ruled an accident during a property dispute. Yesterday, we found his body buried beneath what used to be the Bell family barn. Forensic evidence shows he was murdered, struck from behind multiple times with enough force to fracture his skull. The room erupted. People shouted questions. The Bell family members looked shocked, angry, defensive. William Bell, the eldest member of the Bell family at 78, stood up. "Now wait just a minute. You're accusing my ancestor of murder based on some old bones? There could be any number of explanations." "The bones were buried in secret," I interrupted. "If this was a fair fight, why hide the body? Why lie about what happened? Why refuse to let the O'Sullivan family give their husband and father a proper burial? That was 145 years ago." Another Bell family member shouted, "What does this have to do with us?" "It has to do with the attacks," I said quietly. "The attacks that started the moment Patricia Vance, a Bell descendant, led a tour group to Whispering Ridge. The attacks that have injured 6 Bell family members in the last week." The room went silent. "I know how this sounds," I continued. "I know you all think I've lost my mind. But the truth is, Bridget O'Sullivan, Seamus's widow, cursed your family. She said the Bells would know no peace until justice was done. And she's keeping that promise even from beyond the grave." I looked at Father Michael, the Catholic priest I'd invited. "I need your help giving Seamus a proper burial. And I need the Cherokee Nation's help cleansing the sacred spring site that all of this started over." William Bell stood again. He looked older than he had at the start of the meeting, more tired. "What do you want from us? An apology for something that happened before any of us were born?" "Yes," I said simply. "I want public acknowledgement that Thomas Bell murdered Seamus O'Sullivan and covered it up. I want the Bell family to donate the disputed land to the National Park Service so it can be protected. And I want you to be present when we give Seamus the burial he should have received in 1847. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Patricia Vance stood up. Her arm was still in a sling from her injuries. "I'll do it. I'll acknowledge what happened, because I'm tired of being afraid in my own home. I'm tired of watching my family get hurt. If apologizing for a crime committed by an ancestor I never met will end this nightmare, then yes, I apologize. On behalf of the Bell family, I'm sorry for what was done to Seamus O'Sullivan and his family." One by one, other Bell family members stood. Some did it reluctantly, some with tears in their eyes, but they all agreed. The ceremony took place 3 days later, exactly at the end of Bridget's deadline. We buried Seamus O'Sullivan with full Catholic rites in the old family cemetery at Whispering Ridge. Father Michael performed the service. The Cherokee spiritual leader blessed the ground. Every member of the Bell family who could attend was there, heads bowed. I read from Bridget's original letter, the one where she cursed the Bell family. Then I added my own words. "Bridget O'Sullivan, your husband has been found. He's being laid to rest with the honor he deserved. The truth about his death is known. Justice has been acknowledged, if not fully served. Please, let your anger rest too. Let both of you find peace." The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and gold. As Father Michael spoke the final prayers, I felt the temperature drop, but gently this time, like a cool breeze on a warm day. She appeared one last time. Bridget stood at the edge of the gathering, visible to everyone. There were gasps from the crowd, a few screams. But she wasn't threatening anymore. She looked at the fresh grave, at the simple wooden cross we'd erected, at the faces of the people who'd finally acknowledged what had been done to her family. Then she looked at me. "Go rive maith agat," she said. "Thank you. Tase deanta anois. It is done now." She smiled the first time I'd seen anything but anger in her face. Then she turned and walked toward a bright light that had appeared behind her. I could see another figure in that light, waiting for her. Seamus, maybe. She stepped into the light and was gone. The temperature returned to normal. The oppressive feeling that had hung over Whispering Ridge for days lifted like fog in sunshine. I could breathe again. That was 6 months ago. A lot has changed since then. The Bell family did donate the disputed land to the National Park Service. We've expanded the historical site to include both the O'Sullivan homestead and the sacred Cherokee Spring. The three groups, O'Sullivan descendants, Bell descendants, and Cherokee Nation, now manage the site together. Robert Bell recovered completely from his heart attack. His daughter's broken arm healed perfectly. The family hasn't experienced any more supernatural incidents. The site has become something special. Visitors report feeling welcome there, like the land itself is happy. Sometimes tour guides hear singing in Irish Gaelic near the old homestead, but it's not frightening anymore. It's beautiful. I got a commendation for outstanding historical research and community reconciliation. My supervisor still doesn't know the whole truth about what happened, and that's probably for the best. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm working alone at the visitor center, I'll find a wildflower on my desk that wasn't there before. Or, I'll hear a woman's voice whisper, asterisk, go ribe matha got asterisk on the wind. Bridget O'Sullivan found her peace. But she hasn't completely left. I think part of her will always watch over Whispering Ridge, protecting the land she fought so hard to reclaim. And you know what? I'm okay with that. She's family after all. Just family I'm glad is on my side now. My name is Daniel Ashford, but everyone calls me Danny. I've been a ranger in the Cherokee National Forest for 18 years now, and my father did it for 30 years before me. My grandfather was the first Cherokee Ranger they ever hired back in 1952. People say, protecting these mountains is in my blood, and I guess they're right. I never believed my grandmother's stories, though. She used to tell me about the Stonecoat Giants, the Kekle Kudle that lived in the deep hollows. Said they ate human flesh and turned trespassers into rock. I'd laugh and tell her those were just old tales to scare kids away from dangerous caves. I wish I'd listened. It was early March 1987 when I got the call about the missing students. 3 college kids from the geology department, Michael Rodriguez, Angela Kim, and David Chen. Smart kids, experienced backpackers. They'd gotten permits to spend 5 days studying cave formations in Bloodroot Hollow, about 35 miles from Gatlinburg. You can only get there on foot, which keeps most tourists away. Their permits expired 2 days ago. They should have checked in. I packed my gear at dawn. Radio, first aid kit, rope, my grandfather's hand-carved walking stick with our family initials worn smooth by 3 generations of hands. The weather forecast said late spring freeze, with fog banks settling in the valleys. Not ideal, but I'd worked in worse. Be careful down there, Cherokee 7, dispatch told me. Static crackled on the line. We lose radio contact below 3,000 feet. You'll be on your own. Copy that. I've done this 47 times before. I'll bring them home. But I'd never done it in Bloodroot Hollow. The trail started easy enough. Morning sun cut through the trees, warming my back as I descended. I'd been walking for 3 hours when I noticed the quiet. No birds singing, no squirrels chattering, no insects buzzing, just my boots on the dirt and my breathing. The silence made my skin crawl. Bloodroot flowers covered the forest floor, little white blooms that grandmother said marked sacred ground. They were everywhere, thick as snow. But something was wrong with them. In spots, they'd wilted in perfect circles around certain trees, dead brown rings in an ocean of white. I keyed my radio. Cherokee 7 to base, you copy? Static. Then, words I didn't understand Cherokee language, but not any dialect I knew. My grandmother had taught me some, but this sounded older, ancient. I switched off the radio and kept walking. The creek ran alongside the trail, and I stopped to fill my water bottle. That's when I saw it. The water was flowing backward, uphill, just for a 50-yard stretch, then normal again. I stood there staring, trying to make sense of it. Optical illusion, some weird geological formation. My compass needle swung wildly, then locked, pointing toward a dark cave entrance downstream. Just equipment failure, I said out loud. My voice sounded too loud in the silence. Old gear, need to get it serviced. But my GPS was new, top of the line, and it was showing my coordinates as 200 miles away. I found their base camp an hour later. The tents were there. 3 of them, bright blue against the gray rocks, cooking gear stacked neat, backpacks present. But everything was wrong. The tents faced uphill. Any decent camper knows you face downhill for drainage. and the cooking gear, it was stacked in a perfect pyramid, like a cairn, like something you'd build as a marker. Or a warning. The backpacks hung from tree branches 12 feet up, no climbing gear below them. No way anyone could reach that high without help. I circled the camp, looking for signs. The dirt showed prints' boot treads, heading toward the caves. But mixed in with them were others, bigger, pressed deep into the ground. I knelt beside one and felt my stomach drop. It was a footprint. In solid granite bedrock, pressed 3 inches deep, like the rock had been soft clay. 18 inches long, 6 toes, and in the fading light, it glowed faint blue. I should have called for backup right then. Should have hiked back up where the radio worked and gotten a whole team down here. That's protocol. That's what 18 years of training tells you to do. But those kids were somewhere in these caves, and night was coming. I clicked on my flashlight and followed the glowing prints. They led straight to the cave system, big limestone formations the Geological Survey had marked with yellow tape and danger signs. Unstable. Do not enter. The students had cut the tape. Inside, the temperature dropped 20 degrees in seconds. My breath came out in clouds. The flashlight beam did something strange. It bent around certain rock formations, curving like water flowing around stones. "Hello?" I called. "Michael? Angela? David?" My voice echoed wrong. Too many echoes from too many directions, like the cave had 1,000 mouths all repeating my words. Something moved deeper in. I froze. Listened. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. The scrape of stone on stone. "I'm Ranger Ashford. I'm here to help." The footsteps stopped. Then I saw him. Michael Rodriguez. 22 years old, geology major, Eagle Scout. I'd reviewed his permit application, looked at his photo, smiling kid with his whole life ahead of him. He was in a shallow side cave, about 30 feet in. Still sitting up, hands reaching toward the entrance like he'd been crawling for the exit when it happened. He'd turned to stone, not like a statue, not like something carved. He'd crystallized. Living rock had grown around him, through him, making him part of the cave wall. His face was locked in terror, mouth open, eyes wide. But when I touched his neck, checking for a pulse I knew wouldn't be there, his skin was warm, 98.6 degrees. Normal body temperature. In solid stone. I stumbled backward, hit the cave wall, slid down to sit in the cold dirt. My hands shook. This wasn't real. Couldn't be real. People don't turn into rocks. There's always an explanation, gas leaks causing hallucinations, or maybe I'd hit my head on the hike, or the radio crackled. "Help," a woman's voice, thin, scared. "Please, someone help us." "Angela?" I grabbed the radio. "Angela Kim, is that you?" "He's changing. David's changing like the rocks. I can hear them singing, the old ones. They're so angry." "Where are you? Tell me where you are." "The deep cave. Past the burial chamber. Oh God, they're coming through the walls." Static swallowed her voice. I ran deeper into the cave, my flashlight jumping wild shadows on the walls. The passages got narrower. Tighter. I had to turn sideways in places, granite scraping my jacket. Then I saw the burial chamber. It opened up huge, big as a church. Stone totems stood in a circle, ancient carved pillars covered in Cherokee symbols. Or they should have stood. Half were knocked over. Broken. Survey equipment lay scattered around core samples, hammers, measuring tools. The students had been working here. They'd disturbed a sacred site. My grandmother's voice echoed in my memory. Asterisk. The old ones don't forgive trespass. Asterisk. A sound behind me. I spun. Jessica Whitehorse stood in the entrance, breathing hard. She was another ranger, Cherokee Nation, 8 years service. We'd worked together before. "Thank God you're here," I said. "How'd you get down so fast?" "Helicopter." She bent over, hands on knees, tried to land but the rotors died, just stopped midair, had to rappel down on the winch. "Danny, what the hell is happening here?" "I don't know, but we need to find the other 2 students, now." We went deeper together, and that's when the cave started changing. The walls moved, not like an earthquake. Like breathing. Slow inhales and exhales, the stone itself expanding and contracting. Our flashlights showed veins running through the rock, blue glowing lines that pulsed like arteries. "This isn't possible," Jessica whispered. "I found Michael. He's I couldn't finish. Dead? Worse. We found Angela in the next chamber. She was lying on her back, and she was screaming. Not from pain, from horror. Because she could see what was happening to her. Her legs were stone, solid granite from toes to hips. Her torso was changing. I could watch it spreading. Skin turning gray, then hard, then crystal. Moving up her body an inch at a time. She was still alive. Still conscious. Kill me, she begged when she saw us. Please, don't let me turn all the way. I don't want to be awake when it reaches my head. Jessica knelt beside her, but I grabbed her arm. Don't touch her. We don't know if it spreads. We have to help her. How? I was shouting now, my voice cracking. How do we help her? Angela's eyes rolled toward me. The old ones. We broke their markers. David said the totems were just rocks. Good core samples. We didn't know. We didn't know they were graves. The temperature dropped another 20 degrees. Ice formed on the walls, and something stepped out of the solid rock. It was 8 feet tall, shaped like a man but made of granite. Its body looked carved, every muscle defined in stone, but it moved like water, fluid, graceful. Cherokee ceremonial markings covered its skin, symbols my grandmother had shown me in her old books. Symbols you weren't supposed to speak about. Its eyes glowed blue, the same blue as the footprints, the same blue as the veins in the walls. And it spoke directly into my mind. Asterisk, you bring more trespassers to our rest. Asterisk. The voice was ancient, heavy, like mountains grinding together. We didn't know, I said. My voice came out steady somehow. They're just kids. They didn't understand. Asterisk, the young one understood. He chose to ignore. Asterisk, the stone figure, gestured toward the deeper cave. Asterisk, he stands with us now. Asterisk, David? Jessica's voice was small. Where's David? Asterisk, guarding. Asterisk. The entity raised one hand. The cave walls rippled. Figures began emerging from the stone, dozens of them. People. Or what used to be people, partially transformed. Some were mostly human with stone limbs. Others were mostly rock, with human faces frozen in silent screams. They wore clothes from different eras. 1,960 seconds hiking gear. 1,940 seconds work clothes. Even older 1800s pioneer dress. How long? I asked. How long have you been doing this? Asterisk, since the first trespassers came. Since the pale ones ignored our warnings and defiled our dead. Asterisk, the stone guardians moved toward us. Slow. Inevitable. Their feet scraped on rock. A sound like grinding bones. Jessica was backing up, pulling me with her. Danny, we need to run. Where? They're between us and the exit. Asterisk, you will join them. You will guard this place forever. Your blood is strong, you will make powerful sentinels. Asterisk, wait. I stepped forward, putting myself between Jessica and the entity. My grandmother was Sarah Red Cloud. She taught me the old ways. She told me about the Kekle Kudle. I didn't believe her, but I respected the stories. I respect your dead. The entity paused. The glowing eyes studied me. Asterisk, yet you walk where you should not walk. Asterisk, to save them, to bring them home. That's my job, my duty. Same as you protect your dead, I protect the living. Asterisk, the young man with tools broke sacred totems. The punishment is set. Asterisk, then punish him, Jessica said. She was shaking, but she stood her ground. Take David. But Angela didn't break anything. She only watched, and Michael was just here to study rocks. They didn't mean disrespect. The entity moved closer. The stone guardians stopped advancing but didn't retreat. We were surrounded by the transformed dead, all watching with empty eyes. Asterisk, the woman changes slowly. Her fate is not complete. Asterisk, hope flared in my chest. You can stop it? Reverse it? Asterisk, restore what was broken. Reseal the sacred chamber. Blood for blood, stone for stone. Then we release the woman. Asterisk, and if we refuse? I asked. The entity's hand touched the cave wall. The entire mountain groaned. Rocks fell from the ceiling. The ground shook. Asterisk, then all who enter this hollow will join our guard. Forever. Asterisk, Angela screamed. The stone had reached her chest. Her breathing came in short gasps. The rock was crushing her lungs. How do we restore the totems? Jessica asked. They're broken. We can't put them back together. Asterisk the old ways. Blood. Prayer. The words of your grandmother. Asterisk my grandmother's teachings. The ceremonies she'd tried to teach me. The songs I'd ignored because I thought they were just stories. Jessica grabbed my arm. Danny, do you know what to do? Some of it. Maybe. I looked at Angela, at her terrified eyes, at the stone crawling up her neck. But we need time. Asterisk, you have until the woman's heart turns. When the stone reaches her heart, the change cannot be undone. Asterisk, how long? Asterisk, 2 turnings of the sun shadow. Asterisk, 2 hours. The entity stepped back into the wall and vanished. The stone guardians remained, watching, waiting. Jessica and I ran back to the burial chamber. The fallen totems lay like broken bones across the cave floor. Some were cracked clean through. Others had chunks missing where the students had taken samples. We can't fix these, Jessica said. It's impossible. I knelt by the nearest totem, put my hands on the cold stone, closed my eyes, tried to remember my grandmother's voice, her songs, the prayers she'd sung in Cherokee while tending the small altar in her home. But it had been so long. I'd been too busy being modern, being professional, too busy not believing. Grandmother, I whispered. I should have listened. I'm sorry, please. Help me remember. Jessica knelt beside me. My grandmother taught me some songs. Protection songs. They might help. She began to sing. Soft at first, then stronger. The Cherokee words filled the cave, echoing off stone. And something responded. The blue veins in the walls pulsed in time with her voice. The air grew warmer. I pulled my knife from my belt. Blood for blood, I said. That's what it asked for. Danny, wait. I cut my palm, quick and deep. Blood welled up, red against my pale skin. I pressed my hand to the broken totem, letting my blood soak into the cracks, and I began to pray. In Cherokee. Words I didn't know I remembered. They came up from somewhere deep, from the same place as my dreams, from the bones of my ancestors. The broken totem trembled. Stone flowed like water. The cracks sealed. The missing chunks filled in with new rock that glowed faint blue before fading to match the rest. It's working, Jessica breathed. We moved to the next totem, she sang. I bled. The stone healed. But we were running out of time. We restored 5 totems. Only 2 left. But my hand was soaked with blood, and I was getting dizzy. I'd cut too deep, lost too much. Danny, you need to stop. You're going pale. Can't stop. Angela's dying. And you'll die too if you keep bleeding. I moved to the 6th totem. This one was the worst, split completely in half, a gap of 2 feet between the pieces. I put my bloody hand on one half, but nothing happened. Not enough. It needed more. Both of us, I said. We both have Cherokee blood. Maybe together. Jessica didn't argue. She pulled her own knife and cut her palm. We gripped the broken totem together, hands slick with mingled blood, and we sang. Her grandmother's songs and my grandmother's prayers, weaving together in the dark. The stone pieces scraped across the floor, moving toward each other. The gap closed. 1 foot, 6 inches, 3. Then they touched. Blue light exploded through the cave. The gap totem fused in a flash of heat that singed our hands. We fell back, gasping. One more, Jessica said. Come on. But when we stood, the stone guardians were moving again, advancing from all sides. The entity hadn't reappeared, but its orders were clear. Time was up. We had a deal, I shouted. Asterisk 1 totem remains broken. The pact is not fulfilled. Asterisk. The 7th totem lay in a dozen pieces. Too many, too broken. And Angela was screaming in the next chamber. I could hear the stone in her voice now, a grinding, scraping sound that shouldn't come from a human throat. Danny! Jessica pointed to the deep cave. There, David Chen stood at the entrance. But he wasn't running, wasn't calling for help. He stood perfectly still, watching us with eyes that glowed faint blue. David, I called. We need your help. He walked forward. His movements were stiff, wrong. When he spoke, it was with 2 voices, his own and something older. I chose to stay, he said. I broke the totems. Me, Angela, and Michael just watched. I convinced them it was fine. Just rocks. Just samples. His blue eyes filled with tears. So I'm staying. To guard this place. To make sure no one else makes my mistake. You don't have to do this, Jessica said. Yes, I do. It's the only way to fix what I broke. David walked to the 7th totem. He knelt and placed both hands on the largest piece. Blue light spread from his palms, crawling up his arms. Stones spreading. But he didn't scream, he just closed his eyes. Tell my parents I'm sorry, he whispered. Then the stone took him. It happened fast. Seconds. His whole body crystallized, hands still pressed to the totem. And where he touched it, the stone flowed. The broken pieces lifted off the ground, floating in the air, pulling together like magnets. They assembled around David's stone hands, using him as the core. The totem rebuilt itself with David inside it, a guardian and a monument and a warning, all at once. The cave shook. The entity emerged from the wall, all 8 feet of living granite. Asterisk. The pact is fulfilled. The 7th totem stands. The trespasser has given himself. The woman is released. Asterisk. Where is she? I demanded. Where's Angela? Asterisk. The river takes her. Go now. The mountain closes behind you. Asterisk. The stone guardians stepped back, creating a path. We ran. Through the burial chamber, past Michael's frozen form, into passages that were already sealing shut behind us. The mountain was reclaiming itself. We heard water ahead, the underground river that ran beneath the hollow. And lying on its bank, gasping and sobbing, was Angela Kim. Fully human. No stone. But her eyes were still that eerie blue. I've got you, I said, pulling her up. Jessica, help me. We carried her between us, following the river downstream. Behind us, the cave rumbled. Collapsing. Sealing. The entrance to the burial chamber would be gone forever. David would guard it alone. We emerged from a small cave mouth 5 miles downstream, stumbling into afternoon sunlight. The normal world. Cars and trails and cell phone signals. But none of us would ever be normal again. Angela spent 2 weeks in the hospital. Severe hypothermia, they said. Memory gaps. Trauma. The doctors couldn't explain her eyes, said maybe it was the lighting in the caves, some mineral exposure that changed the pigmentation. But I saw her glance at the stone walls of the hospital, saw the way she could see the stress patterns in the rock, the fault lines invisible to normal eyes. The entity had let her go, but it had left its mark. David Chen was never found. The official report said cave-in. Unstable geological formations. His body was likely buried under tons of rock, inaccessible and unrecoverable. His parents cried at the service. I stood in the back, knowing their son was still there, still conscious, still standing, guard over the dead he'd disturbed. Michael Rodriguez's stone form was discovered a year later by a spelunking team that ignored the closure signs. They got out fast. The Forest Service used his death to justify a permanent closure of Bloodroot Hollow, all 30 square miles of it. Chain-link fences and warning signs and federal trespassing charges. My report said, geological hazard and rockfall incident. The truth went into a different kind of report, one I hand-delivered to Cherokee Nation elders. They read it without surprise. They'd seen it before. Other hollows. Other guardians. Other times when the old ones reminded the new world that some places weren't meant for modern eyes. They performed the proper ceremonies. Quarterly visits to maintain the spiritual barriers. Make offerings, sing the old songs. And they asked me to learn the traditions I'd ignored all my life. So I did. I studied with the elders, learned the prayers my grandmother had tried to teach me. Understood, finally, why she'd been so insistent. Some jobs run in blood deeper than genetics. Some duties transcend paperwork and permits. I requested a transfer to the section that includes known sacred sites. Now I'm the one who monitors them. Who watches for disturbances. Who makes sure hikers don't wander where they shouldn't. It's not in the job description. Not in any manual. But it's the real work. Jessica does the same. We check in with each other every week. Compare notes. Share information about incidents that never make official reports. Because there are more hollows out there. More old ones sleeping under sacred ground. And more people every year who think they can go anywhere, take anything, break whatever's in their way. The bloodroot flowers bloom year-round now in Bloodroot Hollow. a protective circle that never fades. Hikers who ignore the closure signs report feeling watched. Feeling wrong, most turn back, the smart ones anyway. Last month, a group of teenagers posted a YouTube video about exploring the forbidden cave. They made it maybe 50 yards past the fence before they ran back, screaming about stone hands reaching out of the walls. The video went viral. People laughed, called it fake, good editing. But I saw the shadows in that video, saw the blue glow in the darkness, saw the stone guardians moving just beyond the camera's light, and I saw David Chen's face among them, forever young, forever sorry, forever on guard. I keep my grandmother's journal now. In it, she documented sites all through the Appalachian range, places marked with X's and Cherokee symbols. Places protected by things that don't die, don't forgive, don't forget. There's a network of us now. Cherokee rangers and elders, people who know the truth. We pass information quietly. Mark maps the public will never see, stand between the old world and the new, hoping to prevent another bloodroot hollow. But prevention only works if people listen, if they respect the warnings, if they believe. Most don't. Not until it's too late. I still patrol the regular trails, still rescue lost hikers and treat snake bites and give directions to tourists looking for waterfalls. But now I pay attention to the signs my grandmother taught me. The way birds fall silent, the direction water flows, the patterns of bloodroot flowers. And sometimes, late at night when I'm alone on the trail, I hear singing, old Cherokee songs echoing from deep hollows. Voices that come from stone throats, David's voice among them, and Michael's, and hundreds of others stretching back to the first trespassers who refused to listen. They're still there, still guarding, still waiting for the next person who thinks the old warnings are just stories, just like I used to think. My name is Daniel Ashford. I'm a ranger in the Cherokee National Forest, and I'm here to tell you, when you see the bloodroot flowers growing in perfect circles, when you see the warning signs on cave entrances, when the birds fall silent and the air grows cold, turn back. Some places aren't meant for us, not anymore. Maybe not ever.